everyone. Thank you for joining this podcast today, wherever you happen to be watching this, whether it's going to be on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube if I don't get kicked off, or my Rumble channel, wherever you happen to be watching this, welcome, welcome. I'm going to get right into it. So in case you haven't heard the big news yesterday, a federal court judge, his name is Richard Mosley, and I think that he should be named, has ruled that the Liberal government's decision to invoke the Emergency Act in response to the Freedom Convoy was unconstitutional, unreasonable, and unlawful. It violated the Charter and did not give rise to a level of threat to national security as defined by the law. It came down February 14th, 2022. And so basically it seemed to just give police extra powers and they could freeze the bank accounts of Canadians. What a loving gift on Valentine's Day, I must say. But anyway, joining me now is one of the plaintiffs. He's one of the four. Well, there's quite a few people, but he's one of the four, a part of this, who brought legal action forward. His name is Eddie Cornell. He's a retired military veteran. He's from New Brunswick, and he is joining me now. Eddie, hello. Hi, Eddie.
Hi, Anita. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm actually in a very good mood. So, because I was so happy and so heartened by this news yesterday. How about you? How are you? And were you surprised by this ruling?
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm extremely happy about it. I mean, this case began early last year. I guess basically what had happened is there was zero information about it. No one had heard of it. It was going forward. And I think that's a good thing that there really was no coverage about it whatsoever. And then the night before last, I got an email and notice from my attorneys that, a decision was imminent and be prepared for it tomorrow. And I was expecting the worst. I got to be truthful. And when I saw the "we won" on the email, it blew me away. And then from there, it went completely viral. And the best part was, I think, for every Canadian, they had no idea this was going on in the background, that, there was an actual federal case about this. And to, get the news out of nowhere, bang, that, the government acted illegally with the imposition of the emergency order and the freezing of bank accounts. I'm happy that it worked out this way, because if it hadn't gone in the direction that it did, it would have been just another letdown to, discourage people that are already at the point where they feel there's no hope. Well, that's the opposite today, because every Canadian right across the country that's been fighting for 3 years for our rights got a shot in the arm, and they realize we can do this. We're going to hit the finish line. We're going to make things the way they should be. And this was a victory for every Canadian. I was lucky enough to be part of the team that brought this forward.
Right. So, I mean, absolutely. We've had so much of this. All of our major institutions are corrupted. The things that we used to be able to trust, we cannot trust. From universities, from the courts, from the media, where I came from. I mean, it is a big pill for people to swallow that there is such corruption. Before we get into the courtroom and so how this came about for you, what made you participate in the Freedom Convoy in the first place? I guess it's a pretty obvious question, but what was pulling at your heart at the time that made you go to Ottawa?
Well, I guess I should backtrack just slightly. At the beginning of the pandemic, things didn't add up. The narrative wasn't backing up what the facts were. So I started speaking out. I lived in Niagara Falls at the time. Started speaking out all over the province, and it wasn't gaining any traction. I mean, it was the same people showing up at the different rallies, and the support was growing, but not at the point where you'd think, that the rest of the population would wake up. So it was really discouraging. In November of 21, moved to New Brunswick, and integrated with some of the freedom movement out here. And then I was basically sitting on my couch, and I heard about this trucker rally and trucker protest at Convoy that was going to Ottawa. And I went, man, I got to get in my car and I'm going. And that's what I did. And that's how I got involved. I was walking the streets. I had my medals on, and I was, meeting and greeting all Canadians from all over Canada. Somebody saw me, grabbed me, pulled me up on the stage. I gave a speech. And from that point on, things changed. I was able to be taken in. I met Tom Marazzo and Tamara Leach and Chris Barber and all the different leaders within the convoy, and I was able to work on the inner core and support in any way that I could for the entire time, and it was the best experience of my life.
You are the heart of the nation right now. We are so proud of you all. We have an unprecedented 72 hours to 42 hours. Here, the next 3-4 days are critical to setting ourselves up for success for when all those beautiful participants called the Convoy for Freedom show up to Ottawa.
Everything that they said took place in Ottawa, it was proven to be false. So I don't know of anything that they brought forward that turned out to be truthful. So, you have a government that tried to demonize average Canadians that were tired of what the government was doing to the citizens. And they were coming there to express their displeasure with what they were doing peacefully. And we all know what the result was. Yeah. They came at us with everything that they had. And it was, I guess basically what it turned out to be is you have to let tyrants expose themselves. And I think that's what really came out of Ottawa. Everyone remained peaceful, even though everyone was getting gassed and beaten. And we all know the stories. Yeah. Everybody remained peaceful, and it didn't get violent. That is the defining factor of this protest. And that's how they lost. And that's how it exposed it to the world for the tyrants that they are.
Yeah. It was days of protesting, peaceful protest, the most well-behaved protest ever, despite the media, who I used to work for. It just hurt so much to watch the coverage, right? But, everybody was just there and they wanted to be there. When the truckers went, they said, we're staying here till the mandates end. And our prime minister never came to have any meeting at any press conference, no matter what was held. But so it was peaceful. I think businesses enjoyed it. Don't you think that economically it flourished in Ottawa?
Well, partly.
Partly?
The businesses were open when the trucker convoy first started. Then the city and the government forced them to close. And those who did remain open were severely punished.
Oh.
And yeah, a lot of those businesses unfortunately didn't survive because of the bullying tactics and how the city and government came after them after the convoy left. So it was very discouraging, And
but it must have been great in the beginning days for all the businesses, because everybody needs sandwiches, food, coffee, groceries, supplies. And that, right? Like, I would imagine that was great for the economy. The only reason it wasn't good for the economy, just like you said, is from the government stepping in.
That's right. Basically, most of the businesses closed that Saturday. They were forced to close. And, they used a narrative that people were, ripping masks off of people. They were assaulting people. They were doing all kinds of nefarious things. And none of it was true. None of it. And the government to this day, in fact, yesterday, are still spouting the same narrative. And everyone knows it's a lie. It's a sham. But they're just sticking with that narrative, hoping that people will come around to their way of thinking.
I want to just find out a little bit about, the day that the horses came and the police they were really trying to throw you guys out.
Oh, come on through. Come on through. What is happening here? Wow, what is this lady doing? Trampling horses. Stop it. Stop it. What? Oh my God. They just trampled this lady. They just trampled that lady. They just fully trampled that lady. Oh, there's the lady.
Well, tell me about that day for you, or what you saw.
They were there ready to bust heads right from the get-go. You could see in their face they were licking their chops to just get at people and to beat them into submission, and that's exactly what they did. And it was disgusting what they did to people. And, the narrative they tried to do to cover their tracks after the fact with the interim chief, Chief Bell, how, for example, the two people that were trampled by the horses, how he initially said that the clan mother who was trampled, he said that she threw her bike at the police officers. And it turns out it was her walker. And,
Yes.
it destroyed that narrative. The other fellow, we've been trying to find out what happened to him. We have no idea. We don't know what the result of him being trampled. We don't have a name. We don't have an update. I would hope that possibly somebody can come forward with information so we know what happened to that individual. His story needs to be told.
Right. Now, how, yeah, it's so brutal. Tell me about your courtroom experience. You obviously had to testify. What was that experience like? What was going on? And what did you make of Richard Mosley throughout the process?
Well, it was done a little differently. Basically, all of the litigants, are myself, Vince Gerses, Harold Ristow, and Jeremiah Jost, and also Kristen Nagel, we gave our testimony via Zoom. So it was done in advance, and then they would take our testimony and transcribe it. So in the courtroom itself, it was really the Crown versus the litigants. And it was very interesting because I was watching live, and the testimony had already been given. So there was no video evidence of us giving our testimony. It was strictly transcripts. So it was really telling how prepared or unprepared the government came and the narrative that they tried to shape. And the interesting part was, there were several things I noticed about Justice Mosley. He seemed to be in the beginning against what was going on. He seemed to side more with the government's perspective, I would guess. And then he alluded to the fact that he used to be a trucker. That was very interesting, that he was early in life a trucker. So one of the turning points was when Blair Ector, one of the attorneys on our side, he said to the judge that, the bank accounts had been frozen. And the judge said, well, that was only for a few days. So he put it in perspective. Well, yeah, it was minus 25. People had no means to sustain life, couldn't buy food, couldn't afford gas for their vehicle, couldn't make a financial transaction of anything, couldn't use a credit card. And I watched his face, and I knew then and there that something changed. Now, the emergency order, what happened at the end of the summary of the trial is the attorneys on our side said, could you deal with each of these matters as if they were separate matters and make a decision based on them as separate? And he did exactly that. And they ruled in our favor. And it showed, that the government went way beyond what their legal authority was and violated the rights of Canadians with the emergency order, and also by the freezing of bank accounts, which mine was one of the bank accounts was frozen along with 280 other Canadians. And,
right. You have the number. That's the number I wanted to know. Exactly. 280 people. I also heard that, when you were I've heard this, you were in Ottawa, they wanted you out. So that's
right.
the time they're going to freeze. So that means if you're trying to buy gas or some groceries, they froze you out. And you probably were like, so tell me what that was like for you. Were you like, what is going on? Did you have any warning?
No. I mean, no. I went to get some cash, and I thought, like, I couldn't get anything out of the ATM machine. I thought, well, maybe more people had got ahead of me, and there was nothing left. Everything had kind of been shut down in Ottawa for a while, and then I did it again, and I couldn't get anything. So I, that Saturday morning, I went online, and my accounts, I couldn't access them, and it said, contact the office of the president. And I was like, what? So I called Scotiabank, and I got a real vague agent on the end of the line that had no clue of what to do. It had no prepared script or anything well, all I can tell you is to contact the president. So I asked, well, how do you do that? And they really didn't have an answer for me. So then, I knew that I tried my credit card, I tried everything, and everything was shut down. It was, so, there I was trapped with no money and, no ability to make my way back to New Brunswick. If it wasn't for kindness of other people, I don't know what would have happened.
Oh my God. I can't even believe it. There's an article about you written by Trish Wood in her Substack, and it says here, Edward Cornell said his experience having his bank account seized was traumatic. I broke no law, yet the government seized my accounts and froze my hard-earned money. Like, what are you supposed to do there? How are you supposed to get back? They want you out anyway, and they're freezing you out. It was so disgusting that the government did this. But anyway, you go on to say, I am not a criminal. I am not a terrorist. I am a retired Canadian military veteran who honorably served his country. I feel betrayed by my own government.
That's exactly it. That's exactly how I feel to this day.
Yeah.
I no longer have faith in the government of this country that, they would have Canadians' best interest at heart. And I know I can't speak for all veterans, but out of, the trucker convoy, you can see on my shirt, a V4F, Veterans for Freedom was born. And we have over 3,000 veterans across the country that feel the same way that I do. And not all veterans feel the same way. I understand that we're a diverse population, but we feel betrayed by our country. And I don't know if I'll ever get that back in my lifetime. I no longer trust my government. I look over my shoulder everywhere I go. I'm always of the thought that they're coming to get me, and they've proven that they do that. If you look at the Coots 4 that are stuck in jail without charge, and without the chance for bail, it shows what, political prisoners, what can happen to them in this country.
Exactly. We should, when this happened with the freezing of the bank accounts, I was afraid. Like, I'm usually kind of a fearless person. I don't want to live my life in fear, but I started to get scared. And they did that on purpose, because once they get you by your money, where you can't buy bread, you can't buy groceries, then they've got you by the cojones in a way, right? And it's so corrupt to do. And the media never reported it. So it's not on the forefront of people's minds. I did want to show this clip of Christa Freeland back in the day. I don't know why she's smiling. Here we go.
So you're confirming that accounts have been frozen, both personal and corporate, but you're not releasing the information. And the actual follow-up is, I'm just wondering whether the bank accounts will be targeted of individuals who donated to the Give, Send, Go and the GoFundMe campaigns. Are they considered designated people under the Emergencies Act, meaning that their credit cards could be cut and financial services are targeting them as well?
Okay, so the names of both individuals and entities, as well as crypto wallets, have been shared by the RCMP with financial institutions, and accounts have been frozen, and more accounts will be frozen. Crowdfunding platforms and payment service providers have started the registration process with FinTrack. In terms of the specifics on whose accounts are being frozen, you now have the regulations. The financial service providers have those regulations as well, and they, working with law enforcement, will be making the operational decisions.
Exactly, right there, what tyrannical government does. And for her to smirk like that when they're taking those measures against honest, working, hardworking people in this country, it's disgusting.
So disgusting. The thing that burns me about that is they keep saying, two things burn me about that. They keep saying national security, national security. How is the bank account of the average Canadian citizen any type of threat to national security? It isn't. And how do you stand there with a straight face? Mind you, she didn't even have a straight face saying that.
She was drunk on power. That's what tyrants do.
100%. Drunk on power. And the thing is, at the time I was like, FinTrack, I wasn't as familiar, but FinTrack is the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Center of Canada. They are a government organization that helps track anti-money laundering and anti-terrorist financial, matters, right? And they report to the Minister of Finance, which is her.
And
You know,
what people may or may not be aware is that FINTRAC said there was no terrorist or suspicious financial transactions, yet they did it anyway.
they did it anyway. Like, they wanted you out. So how do they expect you to get out in the first place? When you got back to your home province, everything was working again. I understand.
Well,
What do they want people to do?
they wanted us to suffer. They wanted to scare everyone else forever speaking up again. One of the most disgusting things that I saw is, the veterans that day when the horses came stood between the police and the people. And they beat veterans, arrested veterans, threw them in the back of vehicles like cattle, took them to a processing center, drove them around for 2 hours in a freezing cold back of a vehicle, paddy wagon with no heat, and oversteering so they bounce around in the back, process them, take them out to a holding center out in the middle of nowhere, and drop them off in minus 25 weather after they beat them into submission. And they offered no violence or no resistance. In fact, Chris Deering, he was probably one of the most severely beaten veterans, a combat veteran from Afghanistan, the lone survivor of his crew from a roadside bomb, severely injured. When he was standing there, he told the police officers directly to his front, he said, "If you're going to arrest me, I will not resist. I will come peacefully. All I ask is please don't hurt me. I'm a severely injured veteran." They threw him to the ground. You've probably seen the video. And 3 big thugs put the boots to him.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen that video, although I think I've seen people just being absolutely brutalized. Was he a young guy that testified at the POEC?
That's Chris. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
Oh,
Chris is a terrific guy.
how are these officers doing this? Like, I know there are people like Vincent Gerses, Daniel Bulford, people that are like, I'm not having any part of this whatsoever. But the
Right.
people that follow orders, this is the thing about 2024. This is January. It's a new year. We are not going to follow orders that aren't meant to be followed. If one person speaks up, it's hard. You get fired, like myself, whatever. Right. I don't care. I'm strong. But you need more to speak up. What do we do about these people following orders that aren't meant to be followed? What do you think?
Be held accountable. We can never let them off the hook. People, look at me when I say this, and I mean this wholeheartedly. I'm not saying go outside of the law. Use the existing laws. They need to be held accountable. And I say show no mercy with these people. They need to be punished to the full extent of the law. They overstepped and they acted as the goon squad for a tyrannical government. And it's disgusting what they did to innocent people who offered no resistance or violence.
Yeah.
And they proved to what they really are. I no longer trust police in any way. I will not engage with police. I want nothing to do with them. People say, well, yes, there is a lot of good police officers. Yes, that's true. And I know there is. I know many. But you know what? Your time to speak up was 2 years ago, and you didn't stand up. If you'd have stood up and said, we're not doing this, we're not following these unlawful orders, it would have been over. And they didn't do it. They chose a paycheck over doing the right thing.
Yeah. So, same with the media.
Yeah. So that can't be forgiven. So you need to pay the price, and you need to be held to account. And I mean right up the food chain. Following orders has never been an excuse, and we all know what happened after World War II with I was just following orders. Sorry, it's not gonna save you. We will never forget you. Just like they promised, like Chief Bell said, this investigation will go on for months. We will find you, and we will charge you, and we will punish you with financial means. Well, guess what? We're going to turn the same tables on you, and we are not going to forget what you did.
The problem is going up the food chain. The Liberal government is the top of the food chain. This has to change. 2025 is an election year. Like, not that, somebody's going to come and save us, but the problem is the top of the chain. Like, they have all this power, and they've lauded this power over us, which is overwhelming, right?
It is.
Yeah.
We can't vote our way out of this, unfortunately. We have to change the whole culture of the way things are in this country. You know, I look at it like a series of circles. You have the Prime Minister's office that's concentrated power, and they basically control everything. And then you have all the ministers around that, another protection layer. Then beyond that, you then have the courts. That's the next circle around them, right? And then you have the police. That's the next circle of protection. Then you have the military as the next circle. And then the media is the final circle. So you have all these circles to penetrate to get to the core of the problem, which is the concentration of power within our government. And we need things to change. And, the way our government is structured, the way it seems to work, isn't working. It's not working for the people, I can tell you that. It's working for themselves. And, we have a government that's totally out of touch with the reality of what Canadians have experienced and what people are going through. And, I'm never going to quit. I'm never going to give up.
That lifts all of us up to hear that. It just helps us to keep going, although some of us are tired, right? We've been at this for so long. One other thing I just find a little bit annoying is when I watch the media and they say, oh, economically, they closed the border, blah, blah, blah. They had no problem closing the border down for years. In 2020, they shut the border down when they declared an emergency coast to coast, right? They're stopping products from coming in. They did all what they did to the truckers. They're our supply line. They had no problem with business then for years. When there's a protest in Ottawa and one lane of traffic is going through, even like through the Ambassador crossing and what have you,
right?
What's the problem? What the hypocrisy, that economic thing that they hang their hat on is so
they look for
hypocritical.
justification,
Yeah.
So they pick at anything they can to, justify what it is they want to impose on the citizens of this country. And, whenever your government's talking, they're lying.
They make the rules or they appoint the people that'll serve them. That whole POEC, the Public Order Emergency Commission that happened with Justice Rouleau, they keep talking about that in the news. Oh, Justice Rouleau declared that it was justified. Well, from my understanding is he was appointed by Trudeau.
It was a liberal gong show.
Mm-hmm.
It was a liberal gong show. Go through the process. I mean, people want to be heard, but we knew from the get-go, and it became more apparent as it went on, that it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to rule in the manner that he did. But this is an actual court decision, so you can forget the public inquiry. That's yesterday's news. That doesn't mean anything. But this is an actual court of law with an actual decision that has teeth. I have to thank Justice Mosley for making this decision, because I am sure the pressure to go the other way was probably pretty surmountable. It showed most of Canada that not all the courts are in the pocket of the Liberal Party in this country.
Now, may I ask you, you were a military veteran. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience of regarding
there's not
that?
a lot to tell. I was a young soldier back in 1975. I joined in a combat arms trade, the artillery. So we refer to ourselves as gunners. I served 22 years. And I had a pretty good career. I did a tour in Cyprus. While I was there, I was a recipient of the Medal of Bravery. And I had a great career. And, then later in life went on to work for a private corporation until the whole COVID thing came around. I'm a 66-year-old man, that's still got a lot of fight in the old dog. So maybe that's what prepared me for now, because, I'm in a position that a lot of people are not. I don't now have a job that they can threaten me with. And that's why I think it's my duty to kind of, pick up the slack for people who can't speak out, who, are afraid of losing their jobs and, fear for their families. I totally get it, because this government's really put the fear of God into people that, if you poke your head up, we're coming for you. Well, and they've like yourself, you say anything that's contrary to the narrative, bam, they hit you hard and hit you fast, and they punish you. And, you look at, there's people in this country, people will know who I'm speaking of, that have been debanked. You can't get a bank account in this country. They've been totally deplatformed for banking anywhere. You cannot get a bank account. So, back to this freezing of bank accounts, there's actually people who had their bank accounts frozen that committed suicide over this. So, when you look at what effect would it have on people, well, there you go. It's a massive effect. And, they tried to actually get the insurance companies, if you remember in some of their news briefs that they gave, they wanted insurance companies to cancel the policies for truckers and for people who were taking part in the trucker convoy protest in Ottawa. Can you imagine? The insurance companies thankfully said no. If they canceled the insurance on your home, you violated your agreement for your mortgage, and all of a sudden, bang, here you are losing your home.
Man alive. I didn't know about the suicide. I know there's been many suicides with all these ridiculous measures, but I didn't know about that. And I've long wanted to talk to someone that had their bank account frozen, because it was just staggering that they had the audacity to do that.
They showed the world.
Yeah.
They showed the world that they're tyrants. I mean, this is still, it has not gone away in the talk around the world of what happened in Canada. I mean, we're the only nation that's really done that. And it exposed Justin Trudeau and his whole band of merry men to, be the tyrants that they are. Their days are numbered, and they know it. They're finished. So
they're finished, but they still stand up there with a straight face. They can have reporters arrested, and our deputy prime minister just goes, "Well, I don't get involved in that." Oh, and then she can just hold these press conferences saying, "Oh, we don't agree. We're going to appeal," or whatever. Who do you think you are?
Well, she is the puppet master of Justin Trudeau. She's the one that has her hand up his backside and pulling the strings and telling him what to say. I mean, he's not intelligent enough to actually put these thoughts together without her telling him what to do. So, and she's a puppet of the WEF, no doubt about it. And she's taken her orders from the big man, Klaus Schwab himself. So she feels...
And there's people above him. There's people above Schwab. Yeah.
She feels completely indemnified. So she is not going to suffer in one bit. But here's the biggest problem I see in this country with what's just gone down, is now you have the leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, who has, made a deal with this Liberal Party to keep them in power, form a coalition, basically, on a minority status government. He says one thing out of the side of his mouth and then another. He's going to go down in history, I think, equally as bad or worse than Justin Trudeau, as the biggest enabler Canada has ever had. And they're waiting for their 8-year pensions, all of them. They're nothing but money-grabbing tyrants. And history will not be kind to these people.
No, I agree. At least, people in the freedom movement, the people like us, your experience in the military, your toughness, my experience, the people like Vincent Gerses, Daniel Bulford, everybody that's come to the, what I say is the right side, or to the side of personal autonomy. We are the strongest group of people you are going to find. You couldn't put us down. You couldn't put that boot on our face that Orwell talks about. You tried, you're not going to win. So here we are at the beginning of the year. Maybe you could give us some words of wisdom or advice. What are your hopes for this year to come? What would you say to any Canadian watching or anyone watching?
I would say to everyone that's watching, this is an historic victory that most Canadians didn't know was coming. And you need to be very proud of yourselves for holding the line and standing up the way you did for the past 3 years. And the challenges were surmountable, but you did it. And we've made it to this point. Just remember, victory is always just over the next hill. This is going to be a rough ride this year. We have a lot of work to do. This is a battle that we've won, but we haven't won the war. They're going to come at us with everything they have, but be prepared, stick together, and know that there's people out here that have your back, and that we're going to get through this together. And it's going to be victorious when we all reach the finish line, and we will. Just keep the faith and know that we will get this done.
Edward Cornell, thank you for your service. Thank you for pursuing legal action. Thank you for talking to me today. And thank you for all you do. And I hope that I can talk to you again in the future. It was a
Thanks,
pleasure.
Anita. It was really my pleasure to talk to you. I really appreciate it.
Aw, thank you so much. Okay.
Take
Thanks
care.
everyone for watching. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.